There are dozens of firearm manufacturers out there in the world, and within that grouping, there are dozens upon dozens of different types of firearms. It's not an exaggeration. This video, we're going to focus on handguns and the two primary types of handguns that most people will encounter: revolvers and semi-auto pistols. This is the Urban Sentinel. Let's get into it. Now, handguns, for what they are mechanical devices, and just like automobiles, there are different makes and manufacturers and models, but they all share a lot of common factors and features throughout their design. This is a revolver. Basic features on it: the stock is where you grip it, the trigger guard guards the trigger, the hammer inside this cylinder are chambers to where the cartridges would be loaded. They'd travel down this barrel and out the end of the muzzle. The handgun has a set of front sights and a rear notch on it. Simple, easy to use, easy to operate. By pulling the trigger, the hammer moves back till it hits the break point and then goes forward, causing the cartridge that's in that chamber to fire the bullet out the end, going out the muzzle. This is a semi-auto pistol. Different in design, different in looks, has some of the same similar features though. Ammunition would be loaded into a magazine, placed into the magazine well in here. The slide, which when moved back would allow that chambered round at the top of the magazine to enter into the barrel. The hammer is cocked back, ready to be fired. The trigger inside the trigger guard, ready to be depressed. In this model, when the safety is removed and the trigger is pressed, it would then fire the cartridge, expelling the bullet down the barrel and out the muzzle. The primary thing you're going to find on handguns, you're going to find a grip or a stock, the thing that you hold that handgun with, the trigger, a way to load either cartridges directly into it or in a magazine. They would be loaded into the magazine and the magazine placed inside of the firearm, the barrel to which all of the bullets travel down, and the muzzle, which is at the end of the barrel. It's basically the business end of that firearm. Now, within that category, even with revolvers, similarities and differences. This revolver, as you saw before, has a hammer. The hammer and the trigger work together. This is what's called a double action revolver. The action is what the trigger does. The example being this: by pulling the trigger, it moves the hammer back until it breaks and fires. You can also cock the hammer back manually, and you notice the trigger has moved, requiring less travel distance for it to fire. In both cases, the cylinder still revolves, hence the name revolver, to the next chamber to be fired. This revolver, if you observe, there is no hammer. It's hammerless. It functions only in double action. There is no hammer to cock back. So only by pulling the trigger does it actually fire the cartridge that's inside the chamber. Everything else almost identical in its overall makeup and design, minus the actual trigger, or hammer rather. The semi-auto, as you saw, basic functions of it, and this semi-auto, they look similar, but the primary thing that you may notice on these two is one does not have a hammer. This is a striker fire. That little pinpoint there, within this housing, the firing pin and the mechanisms designed that when a magazine is loaded into the well and a round is chambered, inside here, the firing pin and the release mechanism, so when the firearm is gripped and the trigger is pulled, it fires the round. Now, in terms of practical uses for self-defense. All firearms, irregardless of what type of firearm it is, can be used for self-defense. Some are better designed for it. That has to do primarily with its ease of operation as well as the type caliber of ammunition that it uses. In an example, this semi-auto pistol is chambered to fire 22 LR long rifle. This semi-auto pistol is chambered to fire 9mm. This revolver is chambered to fire .357 Magnum. This revolver and this semi-auto are both chambered to fire .45 ACP. Now, I understand that's a lot to take in, and some of these things you may not immediately see the difference or similarities between them. But in practical terms, what you're looking at for self-defense, and that's what this is about, for self-defense, you first and foremost want a firearm, specifically a handgun, that you can best and most accurately and comfortably fire. You can utilize it. It does you no good if you're a small-handed individual to get the biggest gun on the market. And again, even if you have the hand capacity, it's not necessarily a need to have the larger gun. In the same aspect too, you don't want to go too small simply because it's easier to hold and lighter, because the size of the gun versus the type of cartridge that it utilizes, there's always a balance. A large gun or a small gun, what type of ammo it's shooting makes the big difference. So this revolver is chambered to fire .357 Magnum, but it can also fire .38 Special. The primary difference is this is a short 2 3/4 or 1 3/4 inch barrel. Strictly from a sheer comfort level, it is far easier firing a .38 Special out of this revolver than it is firing .357 Magnum. Firing out of this, not as enjoyable. So you always want to make sure that you're firing a cartridge in a caliber that you can handle, because both are effective, but in terms of practice and practicing often, you tend not to do that if you know that the firearm that you're using is going to basically cause you pain and discomfort. You find that there's less enjoyment in practicing, and that if you do go, you just tend to want to go shoot a few rounds and then be done with it because of the overall effects from that caliber. 9mm cartridge is the most popular handgun cartridge anywhere in the world still today. There are plenty of other cartridges out there that are still in use, that are used in large numbers, but 9mm is the most prevalent cartridge around. Now, with that being said, there are dozens of different types of handguns that use 9mm. As an alternate, there is also .380. It's a little smaller, it's a little lighter, but there's also a little bit less recoil, giving you better control over it. Now, practice is still practice. If you practice enough with the firearm that you have, you will become proficient at it. But on a direct comparison, when you're practicing with a cartridge that has less recoil than another cartridge, that also aids in you being more accurate. But it still comes down to you have to be able to practice on a regular basis and be comfortable with the firearm that you're using. So many cartridges can have a plus or minus appeal to different shooters for those different conditions. As I stated earlier, this revolver and this semi-auto, they're both chambered to shoot the same caliber. This actually is a multi-caliber revolver. It is actually chambered to shoot .45 ACP, .45 Colt, and then also 410 gauge shot shell. The primary difference between semi-autos and revolvers is, traditionally speaking, most revolvers that are out on the market today are either 6-round or 5-round. They do make revolvers that hold 8, some hold 12, but again, the number of chambers in a cylinder are based also upon the diameter of the cartridge that it carries. So it's not specifically to say that there aren't firearms for revolvers that hold more than 6. You just have to be able to understand the type caliber that it's shooting, and that may determine how many rounds it actually holds. Whereas with semi-autos, the determination of its capacity is based upon the magazine that was designed for the firearm. In some cases, a single stack magazine, such as this for the 9mm, holds 9 rounds. But 9mm, just like other semi-autos, comes in different configurations, and there are double stack magazines which hold 12, 15, 18, 20 rounds. It also, again, depends upon the diameter of the cartridge, makes the determination on how wide and how many rounds can be fit into that magazine. The key thing with self-defense with handguns, aside from getting the practice and getting the accuracy, is the ammunition capacity. If you're in a self-defense situation, you're going to be under stress. In those immediate seconds that things are going on, you go from 0 to 60 on your stress level. That causes a large chain reaction in psychological and physiological responses. People, human beings, more often than not, when under stress, tend to make small, minute errors, involuntary things that really have to be deprogrammed from you by constant repetition, basically practicing the same motions and actions over and over again to condition yourself subconsciously to respond in that manner. Simply put, under stress, you are more likely to miss the threat with 1, 2, 3 rounds than you are to hit and stop the threat with 1 round. That's just the way it goes. Trained law enforcement officers, as you see in many news reports, you'll hear a situation where the suspect was shot 16 times by 4 officers. All of them had their firearms out, all of them fired on the suspect. But what you often overlook in those situations is, yes, the suspect was shot 16 times, but between 4 officers, there might have been 38 rounds fired. You do the math and you think, well, somebody missed. Multiple people missed multiple times. And these are effectively professionals trained at their job doing what they're doing. Now, everyone is different. There are plenty of people out there that are far more accurate. They are expert marksmen when it comes to shooting. But on average, and that's just it, on average, most people tend to miss. So having a revolver, while it may be simple and easy to operate when it's loaded, you limit yourself in the number of rounds available should you be in a situation where either you've missed or you have multiple targets coming at you. In a semi-auto, having a higher capacity to begin with and also having the ability to quickly reload with a magazine in case, again, you are engaged by multiple threats that require more than 1 shot to stop them. While plenty of movies and TV shows are great, action-packed, and fun to watch, they still do a disservice. It is not to say that in real life people have not been shot once and dropped dead on the spot, but it is to say that the realistic aspects of it is the combination of a person who is the aggressor, they're the attacker, they're at a higher level of adrenaline and energy because their focus is on attacking you. They may not drop with that first shot, or the second shot, or the third shot. There are plenty of places within the human body where you start putting holes in it, the system starts shutting down, but it's not always instantaneous. So they may have enough time, enough energy to still continue their attack towards you. So being able to put multiple rounds into that target quickly and effectively is, again, that combination of practice, getting good at getting onto the target, keeping your, as they say, groups tight, because you don't want rounds flying all over the place. Yes, absolutely. It would be fantastic to, boom, boom, double tap right there. But if you can't get 2 right here and stop them immediately, 2 here, 3 here, 4 here, you put enough holes into them and you put enough holes into those vital organs, you're going to stop that train from coming down the tracks within a few heartbeats. So if you are thinking about getting a firearm for self-defense, for protecting yourself, for protecting your loved ones, whatever the situation may be, especially given the current state that we're in, because there is an increasing level of crime across the country, an increasing level of random acts of violence. There are people being targeted that they don't even know why. They just are the next victim up. Having a firearm does not by any means whatsoever remove you from the chances of becoming a victim in one of those events. It just simply levels the playing field and gives you an advantage over the person trying to attack you, because it may be one person that's simply bigger and stronger than you. It might be multiple people. It might be a person that they themselves have a weapon of some type that they're going to use. Having a firearm for self-defense is an option that I feel more people need to exercise, at least having the knowledge to use one, because you, again, may be in a situation where you yourself don't have the firearm. You might be in a situation that unfolds where you have to have access, and you get access to a firearm to save yourself, to save other people. If you know how to use it, that right there in those few critical seconds can make the difference between you or other people being dead. So I've done a couple other videos that go into the different types of ammunition and calibers and everything else. With this video, again, it's just primarily looking at handguns and the similarities and differences between semi-auto pistols and revolvers. Both have their place, both are functional. In a more practical sense, yes, a semi-auto with its ability to have more ammunition in a magazine, and even if the semi-auto only has 8 rounds, 9 rounds in the magazine, being able to quickly reload and put in a new magazine is still faster in a semi-auto than it is in a revolver. And there are people that are extremely fast at reloading revolvers, without a doubt, but all of that comes with practice. That's the key thing. You have to put in the time to practice, not just a few minutes a month, not just a few hours during the year. You have to put in consistent, regular practice at every aspect of it. You put in the practice in drawing your firearm from the holster, the way that you're going to carry it on you. Put in your practice on getting the correct grip and sight picture every single time. Get in the practice of giving that good trigger pull. Get in the practice of getting the bullets on the target all the time consistently, keeping them closer and closer and closer together until you get that good grouping where you know that every round that you put out there is going to hit somewhere within that target area. Those are the things that you need to focus on. Those are the things that you need to start practicing and learning now while you still can, because in a situation a week, a month, a year down the road, you may not have the opportunity or the ability to do so. So it's better to learn and get what you need now and hope that you won't need it later on than be at the other side of the line wishing that you could have gotten this knowledge, gotten the training, and gotten the firearm that you needed then. All right, well, that's it for now. I'll catch you guys in the next one.